Welcome to NuttieBuddie Sports. Previewing the Chicago Bears.
Oh boy, I'm always ready to talk about the Bears.
Okay, so the Bears last year, they finished third in the division. They were 6-11. And we're gonna first talk about the big question. So let's ask you this, Gavin. What is your big question for the Chicago Bears?
Are they going to get it right this time? Is this it? Is this the fresh start that they have tried and restarted? If you unplug the computer and plug it back in or whatever, is this going to be the time that it actually works out? They did this with John Fox and then, and Matt Nagy. Of course, the front office has stayed largely the same for many, many years now. But now this is a complete overhaul and a complete fresh start. That's my biggest question is, are they going to get it right? Now, if you ask me at the moment, I would indicate and say, I like the way things are heading, but, again, it's going to, throughout the season, we'll be able to tell more, next season's, a couple seasons from now, more and more it'll become, evident if this is going to be right for them or not. I just hope they do because they so desperately need to finally figure out a coach and a GM that actually can work for this organization.
Yeah, no doubt. Have they figured out? I have the development of Justin Fields. Are they going to develop him properly?
That's probably the second biggest question I would say.
Yeah. I think that there's the talents there. I think he has a lot of potential. I like him in moments. It makes me nervous though that, and we'll talk about as we get more into like some of the specifics, but it's a second year. They already had to change things. That's never good for a young quarterback. And it's not, I don't think they're doing their best right now to help them out this offseason as far as what they could have maybe done. But that would be the big question. Are they going to stunt his development?
Yeah.
Or are they going to do a good job of developing this kid? Because he has a ton of potential. I think he can be a real good quarterback. They just have to do it right.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay, let's talk about favorite move. Gavin, what was your favorite move that your Chicago Bears made this offseason?
Well, I'm going to give you a draft pick and a free agent signing. So draft pick, I'm going to go with their first draft pick that they had in the second round. That's Kyler Gordon. Addressed a crucial position of need. They are last couple of years, ever since they cut Kyle Fuller for whatever reason. That was a terrible move by Ryan Pace. I almost said Foles, but former GM Ryan Pace cutting Kyle Fuller. They've been really, really thin at defensive back. Specifically corner. They haven't really supplemented anything in the last couple of years, getting some new guys other than Jalen Johnson, and he can't do it all by himself, especially in a league, as we talked about, a lot of receivers, passing is becoming so heavy amongst many teams. So they get a guy in Kyler Gordon, a lot of indications he's been really good at camp. He's had some really good showings. They like what they see from him. The film and stuff. Again, it's early on. Yet we haven't seen him in a real game yet, or at least a regular season game. But indications are that he's moving ahead very quickly. And I think more so than anything, Ryan Poles came in and addressed the position of need. Didn't, pick a running back or something that they don't really need. That he picked something that was so crucial and something that they needed immediately. And I think they got a guy, the best player they could have gotten at that point. And then, we can talk about him in a minute. But my other one, free agent signing, was Lucas Patrick, the offensive lineman, 29 years old, spent pretty much his entire career with Green Bay. Started 28 games in the last 2 years for the Packers. He's kind of had a bit of a floater role, as a center, as an offensive guard. Before that was largely just a depth option, but metrics wise, he shows really well, in pass blocking and run blocking. He's pretty much a veteran at this point. I know he had a hand injury in camp, but he should play a majority of the season. And he seems to factor as a big pickup for the Bears on the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm going to just piggyback on that. I just like how much resources they threw at their offensive line. That's like one of my favorite moves. Their offensive line last year was not good, to say the
No.
least, right? They drafted either 4 or 5 offensive linemen
5.
in the 5.
5, yep.
Yeah, 5. So they really threw a ton at that position, including signing free agents. I like that because
Mhm.
I think it shows that they understand the priority of the NFL is always in the trenches. Like after you get your quarterback, the next 2 things you have to do is protect the quarterback and get to the other team's
Yeah,
quarterback. That's the 3 things to build a team. And that's what I
absolutely.
like, with the Lions. That's what I like what they did last offseason. They were building the lines up last year.
Mhm.
And it seems like the Bears this year is like, hey, let's get that offensive line fixed. You do not want Justin Fields running for his life all over again because that will stunt his growth. So the fact that they threw so much resources at the Chicago Bears offensive line, I love that. So I that was kind of like my favorite encompassing move that they did this offseason.
You have to agree so much with that, and, I still think that largely it's not gonna be spectacular,
Mm,
I think at best they're gonna have, like, a middle of the road offensive line, but that would certainly look a whole lot better than, like, bottom 5 offensive line.
correct.
Which they've had the last several years. Again, they have a good combination of guys that they've signed. They made some veteran signings like Patrick Schofield,
Hmm.
Riley Reef.
Yep.
Some of these guys that they're not again tremendous, but they're veteran guys. They're guys that they're going to start on a lot of teams. Not all, but a lot of teams that you could put them on. Plus, again, 5 rookies. I mean, that's big. I hear some big things potentially for Braxton Jones. A few of the other ones probably won't get much time this year, but I do think that there's potential for the future, and I think that they have a better idea of what they want to do with this line more so than they have in years. And I think it largely starts with Ryan Poles being a former lineman, played in college very briefly in the NFL, having done a lot of scouting and a lot of personnel work with linemen over the years. He knows how important that position is. And, kind of, I don't want to steer too far away from the topic, but there's a reason he didn't bring back a lot of the personnel from last year. Not just because it wasn't good, he's looking for guys with certain attitudes, certain motivations. Why didn't he bring back James Daniels? James Daniels was one of the best linemen on the Bears last year. He opted not to bring back Daniels, again, largely probably for stuff we don't see on the field, stuff off the field, work ethic, whatever it may be, along with several other guys. So I think that Poles is definitely valuing this culture, definitely this mentality of creating a strong O line, really before anything else.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, yeah, and you can see it just by their offseason moves. And like you said, maybe they won't make a huge impact this year, especially the rookies. But who knows next year? Like if they get time to develop and progress, and they're trained and taught right, who knows? So yeah, so I just love that they did that. Like because it shows that they're at least committed in like protecting Justin Fields. That's
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
So okay, let's go on to our next topic. Gavin, what was your least favorite move that the Chicago Bears made?
Well, I want to preface this with saying I think there's a lot of Bears fans out there, a lot of just onlookers that think, oh, well, you trade Khalil Mack and you get rid of all these guys, you lose Allen Robinson, whatever. You should try to like replenish immediately. You need to go out and sign, some big name free agents to kind of revamp this team, get Justin Fields tons of weapons or whatever. To an extent, yes, you do have to replenish. You do have to give a young quarterback options. But I do think that they're being cautious and they're not being the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I respect. Ryan Poles needs to figure out who his core is, along with Matt Eberflus, before he can start to throw money into the fire and try to bring on a bunch of free agent guys, bring on a bunch of veterans. He's trying to build this thing from the ground up, and Rome was not built in a day. So I personally like what they're doing. I think some people may say that was their least favorite move. I just wanted to throw that out there first. But I would say if I had a least favorite move, which this is getting a little picky, I'm 6th round pick Tristan Ebner. He's a running back. I don't think that they had a need to take a running back. I personally would have liked to see them get a 6th offensive lineman or go to another position again, throw darts at a dartboard to position that they may more readily need at this point than running back because they don't really have a need for him. But overall, I'm a big fan of what they did this offseason. I don't mind the cautious approach. Some people are gonna get on the front office for that, but again, Rome was not built in a day, and I like the fact the Bears are going one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and they're gonna make sure that they get this right in pieces before they try to put a whole thing together.
Yeah, I didn't hate a ton of their offseason moves. So the Allen Robinson thing, the only thing that I have against that is like you probably should have traded him last year, got something for him, like
Yeah.
instead of letting him
Unfortunately, it's you change, that was just, Ryan Pace being, Ryan Pace,
Yeah, that's
he
fair.
he should have, and honestly probably could have moved Khalil Mack last offseason or something. At least Ryan Poles, you know, had the luxury to move a few of those guys while that he still had them. But I do agree. I mean, if they would have moved Robinson, but just the change of the regime, had Poles had control of this team last year, they'd probably be in a much, much different spot if you ask me.
Yeah, that could be true. Yeah, that could be true. Right. So and I will kind of jump on this here is the fact that I understand where you're coming from. Like I don't think you should spend a ton of money at wide receiver, especially if you're trying to figure out things. But a lot of wide receivers this offseason signed for 1-year deals very cheap.
Yeah.
So for instance, Juju Smith-Schuster signed a 1-year deal for $3 million. He can play. Jarvis Landry signed a 1-year deal for $6 million. There was someone else. I was like, Odell's still available. Let me look here. I got Jamison Crowder, 1 year, $4 million. It's just that it wasn't. There was a wide receiver. We talked about him in our AFC West podcast. Brian Edwards from the Raiders he's a solid young wide receiver. He's only 2 years in the league. 5th round pick. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that they should have given up a ton of money to get, and then DJ Charks, who we just talked about, 1 year, $10 million. I'm not saying they should have given up or signed these guys to huge contracts, but to get players to help your young quarterback grow, I think is important. You got to get guys back there that can run routes and get open to make your quarterback's life easier. So for the most part, I didn't hate anything they did, but I just thought if they could have got a veteran or two in there, that like a Crowder or a Charks, like on a 1-year deal, just to give Justin Fields sort of this safety break. I like Mooney though. I like Mooney, but like just to give him more options. I would have liked that a little better. So that was my least favorite move, is just that they didn't, I think, get enough to help Justin Fields grow in that department to make his life easier as far as getting his wide receivers open.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that, I was definitely rooting for specifically Juju and Jarvis Landry are two guys that I was like really kind of keeping tabs on. Like I was, in the height of free agency, I was really hoping to see, a notification on my phone that one of them was going to the Bears or something. I know he went for not for a little bit of a different deal, but I wouldn't even have minded like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling coming over to the Bears or something of that nature.
I don't like the contract he signed for, though.
No, I don't like the
Yeah,
contract.
yeah.
I mean, if they would have made it work, again, it's one of those things. I don't know. Maybe the Bears did reach out to some of those guys. They probably was being very, very specific on what they wanted to sign these guys for, and whether it was the amount of years or the amount of money or the vision that they were trying to have with these guys. I don't know what the negotiations may have looked like. I think the Bears probably did their due diligence on at least a few of these guys. But certainly they were being kind of specific. Maybe they should have taken a little more of a chance, but it is what it is. I mean, I just want to see them grow a little bit, see if they can help Fields in other ways, and then hopefully maybe make some of those bigger moves next off season is the hope, at least.
Yeah, and that's fair. And just on the positive side, they didn't do what you said, like the Jaguars did, which go out and get Zay Jones, go out and get Christian Kirk. They didn't do that. So that's good. But so that was one thing. This is just a personal thing. It's not a big deal. I think he's going to be a great he'll probably be a good head coach, but I am big on, if you have a young quarterback, get an offensive minded head coach. I'm a proponent in that. That's like my own philosophy. It's selfish. I understand that. So personally, for me, I really wish they would have went with an offensive minded head coach over a defensive minded head coach. Not again. I think Eberflus will be fine. But
Right.
personally, when you have Justin Fields, I'm thinking, okay, putting an offensive minded coach back there to help work with him that will not be poached by other teams if he has one good year or whatever. I would rather do that as an organization than get a defensive coach.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I would say. 90% of people that say we're not a big fan of Eberflus. That's the reason. They wanted Brian Dable or somebody else to come in. Was it the Vikings coach O'Connell or
Mhm.
whatever? They wanted somebody of that nature to come in with that offensive background. Now, again, I don't know all the negotiations they had with
Correct.
coaches or the ones they considered. Personally, I look at this Eberflus signing a lot more in the way of a Dan Campbell. Now, granted, there's two totally different situations here of, young quarterback versus Jared Goff, who's,
Correct.
been in the league quite a bit longer. But overall, as a football team, as a culture, as, an entire 53-man roster, I think that's what they were looking at. That's the reason I don't mind it because I think Eberflus is going to take them from a clown show that they were the last couple of years from top to bottom. That goes for everybody, top to bottom, all 53, to a team that can actually be respectable with the fundamentals and things. Now, again, ultimately, you want Justin Fields to come along, but I think they recognize the importance of we need to get this team as a whole together, before we can even really start to focus on specific parts. Because if we are so weak in certain areas, it's not going to help if we have a good quarterback if everything else is just the worst.
Mm-hmm.
I think they really wanted to try to stabilize everything else. I think ultimately that's why they went with Eberflus. I'm sure again there was a lot of closed door things that we don't know about,
Sure.
and maybe why they chose Eberflus. Ultimately, though, I don't mind him because I think again he's that football guy. He's passionate about the game. He's passionate about hard work. Even though he doesn't have that offensive background, I think he wants the best for Justin Fields, and I think that he'll continue to do things to put Justin Fields, in the best spot that he can with his resources.
Yeah, and that's very possible. And I hope you're right for your sake. It's
Right.
not, I don't root against the Bears, even though I'm a Lions fan. So
Right.
I hope you're right. But it's a sort of like a internal philosophy that I
Yeah.
project onto teams when they don't do
It's
what I want.
understandable, and I don't like readily defend the Bears because they do a lot of stupid stuff. So I'm not trying to be one of those fans that just purely biased. Every move they make is the best. I see a lot of failures that they make, but at this point, Eberflus is not giving me anything to not like. I think
Correct.
he's giving me a lot to like at this point. Once we get into the season, maybe I'll start to backtrack on that a little bit. But to this point, it is what it is, and I think that it'll do fine. We'll just see how good Luke Getsy can do, and how long Luke Getsy stays around to mentor Justin Fields.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay. So Gavin, let's go to our next topic. What will make what will make the Bears season a success or a failure in your mind?
Just the offense, the line, the play calling, the consistency. That's where it's going to start and end at. I mean, defense, they added a few parts. They're going to probably be above average defensively. They're not going to be that really good Bears defense from a few years ago yet. And I think they're on their way. They got a lot of younger players now, new coaching. Defense, I think, will hold their own, but it's going to start and end with can the play calling work? Can the offensive line do their part? It's just going to start and end with the offense. I mean, that's, plain and simple.
I agree. That's why I wrote down Justin Fields, because that's really the biggest thing in my mind for the Bears. And I know it's kind of the easiest, but the most
Yeah.
obvious. But if you come away with this season, it was like I was talking to Luke about Trevor Lawrence. If you come away with this season, even if you win 3 games, but Justin Fields looks like a good quarterback, yeah, he's the guy. You're happy. You got to be happy.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, we're good. We're gonna be good next year. Just replace some things, bring some other people in. That's what I imagine if I'm a Bears fan, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
because, even if you get a top 3 pick, you're like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if that did happen, you're like, we're just going to add the best like wide receiver, the next Jamar Chase,
Yes.
the whatever, right next to Justin Fields. So I think that's would be a successful season for the Bears, is just knowing that Justin Fields is for sure that quarterback that you can build around for years to come.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I go more general just because there's so many things to hit on with that
No,
offense.
it's true. It's true. Yeah.
And it's like Justin Fields is going to get a lot of the attention. I would say, like, if I want to pick something specifically, it's going to be the coaching with the play calling because,
Mhm.
granted, this is totally different than Matt Nagy. Like, he's out of the picture. He can't hurt us anymore, or at least I don't think he can. But we'll see if Getsy, can come in. It's first year coach. I know they've worked for several months now, but there's always a learning curve with that. Getting everybody on the same page. Hopefully, throughout the year, he can find things that work. Ways to better Justin Fields. But I think it's going to be a big year for Getsy as a coach too. Can he be a guy that even if he's not around forever, if he can come back and like say, yeah, this is a pretty good offensive coordinator. We want him back next year, not let's explore other options.
Mhm.
That's going to be a win for the Bears. Is can you keep that offensive coaching right? Because that's again something that's been a carousel for them for years now. And I think it all goes hand in hand. But definitely, yeah, the offenses. Can you take some positives away? That's going to be your most successful season.
Yeah, I agree. Any other additional questions with the Bears?
I'm trying to think. I mean, overall, I would say, in the way in some comment. I mean, I will ask you one. I mean, looking at the defense, I know we didn't talk about it a whole lot. I mean, I don't know if you have any specific thoughts, with trading Khalil Mack, kind of what they bring back on that D line. I know Quinn had a really good year. I know Gibson's shown some promise, but I've seen some things where people are saying like the Bears have like the worst D line in the division. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, well, it's relative, right? Like if you're gonna say it's the worst in the division, I actually like the Packers D line a little bit, like who they drafted to add in there. I think they lost Zaire Smith, but I like Gary and the other guy. I think they have the other Smith still, right? No, they don't have Preston.
I
I don't
think they
remember.
lost to Darius Smith.
Yeah, to
They
the
lost.
Vikings.
Yeah.
And I do like the Vikings as well. I see the potential in the Lions, and I don't hate the Bears defensive line either. So even if it's like, I think it's close enough where it's not that like I don't think it needs to be as pronounced as saying it's the worst. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I like Robert
Yeah.
Quinn. I think he's good. Hit them trading Khalil Mack, like that's what they should do. Like the guy, any like even Roquan Smith. I'm not saying they should trade him because I understand that like he is that Mike linebacker, that
Yeah.
that Darius Leonard of Eberflus defense. I get that, but he's 30, I think, right? So by the time he's 30.
Who's that? Roquan Smith?
Yeah, is he 30?
Oh no, he's this is the last year of his rookie contract, so
Oh,
he's
then yeah, I'd keep him. But
yeah,
like someone like Quinn, right? Like he's an older player. It's like
31 or 32. Yeah.
right. So it's like by the time your team's ready to go, he's going to be gone. So I'm okay with teams looking at those veteran players and being like, can we get assets for this? Like that's what like I can't in the same breath say, hey, you lost Allen Robinson for nothing, and I'm a little disappointed you couldn't get something out of that. But then you trade Khalil Mack to get something for him. It's like that's like, it's sort of hypocritical.
Yeah.
I love that they traded Khalil Mack because it's like he's 32, he's a high cap number, and you're not going anywhere. Get something for him. So I agree with you. And as far as your question about the D line, I think it's close enough where I wouldn't say any team in the division has the worst defensive line. I think that's a little pronounced.
Yeah, and I do like, just kind of a couple of points I'd like to make. I do think that they probably Eberflus driven. They made a couple of moves to get some guys on the line. They got Muhammad, guy that he actually worked with in Indianapolis. Probably won't play a big part, but they did, I think, go for a more depth approach. Like we talked about a team like the Lions, didn't really go so much into the depth. They didn't really value that much this offseason. The Bears did a little bit more, and I think that ultimately is going to be better for them. Number one, you got guys that are hungry, that have competition. That's ultimately why I would say, like, if we were going to rank defensive lines, not that we are, but I probably wouldn't put the Bears the worst in that regard because they're a little bit deeper. They've got some proven guys, but ultimately, as you mentioned, it's pretty close. I don't even think anybody should be really talking about that because all 4 defensive lines are pretty decent. I mean, there's way worse in the NFL. It's just one of those things we'll have to kind of see until, we get into the season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like I said, I mean, yeah, I think the Packers have a solid defensive line. I love Zaire Smith next to Danielle Hunter, and I like Okora, but you make a good point. It's like, what kind of guy are we going to get at that position? So it's all like, on paper, maybe they're looking on paper if everybody stays healthy, maybe they have the worst. But like, I just think that's too over pronounced when you look at the. I don't think. I probably, if I had to pick, maybe Minnesota. I like because I love pass rushers, and if you can get Smith and Hunter, I think those two are a good duel. But again, it's just too close to be saying the worst. I think I don't know. Yeah. It's like saying in the AFC West, it's like saying that the Chiefs have the worst defensive line because the other teams have. I think all other 3 teams have like 2, like you could say, elite pass rushers.
Right. Or, I mean, you could even say with like the quarterbacks in the same division. I mean, you could say Russell Wilson is the worst quarterback in that.
Correct.
League. Like it's worst as a very negative connotation to it. And it's like, maybe out of that group, but like if you stack up a bunch of Hall of Famers against one another, one of them's going to be the worst.
Right. Correct. I mean, and that's my point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that's a good question. Okay. Let me ask you this then, Gavin, predictions for the Bears season. Over under I found at 6.5 wins. You have the over under for that.
I'm gonna take the over, but very slightly.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 7-10. Maybe again just like a step over the Lions, but I expect it to be a set. Like, not that you lose 10 games and you say that's a good thing, but I expect it to be a far more bearable 7-10 than what we had with Matt Nagy, just the complete botchery of coaching and play calling and everything. Like, I expect it to be more of guys that are young that just aren't executing yet, the growing pains, the figuring it out on the field, rather than this whole show on the sidelines and all of the, frustrations of that. I'm hoping they can take this 7-10 or so this year, take a few wins under their belt, and then just kind of make a big step going into, the following season.
Okay. So you just got a slight over.
Yep.
I have the opposite, just a slight under. I think 6 and 11. I think the Bears and Lions are probably going to finish somewhere between this 5 to 7 range. So 6 and 10 I have for the Bears as well as for the Lions.
For sure.
So it's close. Obviously I have questions, offensive line, I think it's a little obviously better than last year, but how much better, we'll have to wait and see. The pass catchers, I'm not a big fan of, and then we'll just see, because everybody's learning a new system as well. So, just a slight under 6 and 11. I gotta get used to that.
Yeah, it's that extra game is throwing everybody off.
Still no. Okay. Thanks so much for watching this clip of NuttieBuddie Sports. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you'd like to listen to the rest of the podcast, click on one of the links down below. And if you want to give us your thoughts on any team in any division, let us know in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we will talk to you guys soon.